Question is that this bill be now read a second time, and I call the honourable member for Riverina.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker, and I concur with the former Speaker's fine words, and in the spirit of bipartisanship I too want to thank the member for Burt, the current Veterans Affairs Minister, for being in the House to listen to these important speeches. It's not always that a minister is able to be present for all of the speeches on a particular bill, and he has made himself available, and I do thank him. And I also, like the former Speaker, want to thank him for addressing the matters I've raised with him and being prompt to take my calls and then to respond to those conversations that we've engaged in. And if this is going to be a measure of his tenure as the Veterans Affairs Minister, then I'd like to think our veterans are going to be well served, as they always have been. And veterans has to be, as the previous Speaker mentioned, be beyond the partisan argy-bargy of politics. Now, the position of Veterans Affairs Minister is an old one. It has been around since it was called the Minister for Repatriation, and Edward Miller served in that role firstly from 1917 when the position was inaugurated, and he served in that position until 1923. The current Veterans Affairs Minister is in fact the 46th person to serve in that role. It is an important position, and I say this as a fine former Veterans Affairs Minister, the member for Gippsland, enters the chamber. He knows all too well of the importance of our veterans. And yesterday we heard a fine address in reply, an inaugural speech by the new member for Menzies, who in his concluding remarks said, and if we ever lose our map, he was referring to the building that we are in, the wonderful House of Representatives, if we ever lose our map, he said, let us stand at the main entrance. At that point, you will see a road that draws a long line to names on a wall. These are the names of Australians who traded all their tomorrows so that we may have our today. And of course he's right, and having just looked at the Australian War Memorial's website, there are 103,010 names on those walls that he is mentioning, and they are the Bronze Roll of Honour. They are the names etched in history, etched in immortality, of those who went and served and lost their lives in the duty of our nation. Some of them volunteered, some of them were sent, but all of them had that obligation to our nation, to our freedom, to our democracy, and we owe them a debt of gratitude, just like we owe a debt of gratitude to those veterans who return from conflicts, those veterans who return from peacekeeping missions, those veterans who may never even leave our nation. And there are many of those too, also on the Wall of Remembrance, also on the Roll of Honour, who gave and paid the ultimate sacrifice for our nation. Now, this bill before us, the Defence Veterans and Families Acute Support Package Bill 2022, is an important piece of legislation which is being agreed upon by both sides of the chamber, and that is so very important. I am a former Minister for Veterans Affairs and Defence Personnel, served in the role from the 20th of December 2017 to the 5th of March 2018, so 100 years from the time the position was first created. Not a long time in that role, but other duties. I was then called upon to do other duties, including the Deputy Prime Minister's role. But indeed, I knew how important it was, having also been a former Assistant Minister for Defence, having been someone who proudly comes from the only inland regional centre in which there are all three arms of the defence. And I say that because we've got the home of the soldier, Kapuka, the Army Recruit Training Centre, where every recruit does their basic 13 weeks of training, and so we have march-out parades every other Friday just about, and people, families, come from all over the nation to proudly watch that long line of khaki which stretches around the parade ground at Kapuka and stretches all the way back to Gallipoli and even before that. And that is not lost on those families, on those friends, on those brave men and women who are Australia's newest army recruits. And of course, if you spend any given time in the Royal Australian Air Force, you will end up at Forest Hill, RAF Base Wagga Wagga, and that is good. That is fantastic, and that has been in place for many, many decades, and may that long continue. And of course, we've got a Navy base connected and attached and working alongside Forest Hill, also connected and attached and working alongside HMAS Albatross, Nowra, and making sure that naval officers get that inland experience, Deputy Speaker. We're a long way from the nearest drop of seawater, but Wagga Wagga is very proud that we are a garrison city, a tri-service city, and that will continue because of the fact that we are spending nearly $1 billion of infrastructure money going towards upgrading those two important bases to serve those three important military traditions: Navy, Air Force, Army. In February 2018, when I was the Veterans Affairs Minister, I introduced the Veterans Affairs Legislation Amendment, the Veteran-Centric Reforms No. 1. And I know how much work that the member for Gippsland had to play in that particular legislation. It implemented several new initiatives to deliver better services to veterans and their families, and it was groundbreaking, groundwork that needed to be done, was done, and the benefits are now flowing through our defence communities, through the general community. This bill created a new veteran payment to assist financially vulnerable veterans who have lodged a compensation claim for a mental health condition and are unable to work while their claim is being determined. And I am so pleased that, and I note the member for Solomon is here too, and I thank him for his service to our nation in uniform. Thank you. But I digress. As I was saying, if you spend a minute in defence, in uniform, you will get free mental health care for life, as you should. Partners of veterans may be eligible for the veteran payment, and veterans with dependent children may be entitled to the maximum rates of family tax benefit Part A without being subject to the family tax benefit means test while they receive the veteran payment. At the time, I said that veterans and their families are at the heart of communities around Australia. Of course, that has rung true from 1917, when World War I was still raging and being waged in Europe, in Africa, and it's just as important today. Our veterans have supported us, this government and all governments, committed to ensuring they receive and have access to support services that they need. Family plays an essential role in a veteran's health and well-being, and this bill, the veteran-centric bill, will ensure that vital services such as income support and health care help veterans and their families transitioning into civilian life. And I know that Prime Ministers past and Prime Minister Turnbull did it, Prime Minister Morrison, and indeed Prime Minister Abbott and others too, put in place policies to ensure that veterans were looked after when it came to being absorbed back into civilian life and, most importantly, getting jobs. Not every veteran is broken. Not every veteran requires the help that other veterans may well need, and veterans are contributing mightily to the nation's workforce, to the nation, beyond their uniform life. And that is also very well commended, and I thank Prime Ministers of all political persuasions for making sure that veterans can transition back into civilian life, can, after their time of duty is over, can make sure that they can contribute for their own well-being and for obviously the community's well-being. Now, the purpose of this bill before the House is to provide better tailored, short-term targeted support for veterans and their families, and it has four key components, being that it ensures support payments are exempt from income tax or social security determinations. It ensures that there is expanded flexibility in choosing services to match a veteran's individual needs. It extends eligibility to family members of working-age veterans who are at risk of or are in crisis, including the removal of a veteran's requirement for warlike service to have been undertaken, and it continues the harmonisation of veterans' entitlements across the 3 veteran-related acts. All important provisions, all vital components, and all part of this bill. Now, the bill is almost identical in scope and cost to the Coalition's Veterans Affairs Legislation Amendment, Enhanced Family Support Bill 2022, which was introduced in March, which was to have taken effect from 1 July 2022. And so I commend the member for Burt, the Minister for Veterans Affairs, for picking this up and running with it. And as I say, this is bipartisan. As I say, this is across the chamber, and I certainly acknowledge that. The bill establishes a wider group of people who will be eligible for assistance under the Department of Veterans Affairs Family Support Package. And the $11.5 billion that the Commonwealth spends on veterans is a cost, yes. It's a cost to the bottom line, but it's an investment. It is an investment in those people who have served this nation, who deserve every bit of help, every bit of support and every bit of respect that they deserve, that is justifiable, that they are entitled to and that we give. And largely uncapped, as it should be, because those veterans who have fallen through the cracks, who may not have previously engaged with the Department of Veterans Affairs, who may not have sought help, who may not be receiving help, but who suddenly found themselves requiring assistance, should contact the DVA. And if they don't get the help or the support that they need in that first phone call, try again. I urge and encourage them to do that. Go through one of the wellness wellbeing centres. Appreciate that Wagga Wagga, my hometown, is currently in the throes of trying to establish 2. One called Patria, a community-driven centre, and another one, the RSL Wellbeing Centre, which had its opening of sorts last October. Now, it is modelled on the federally funded veteran wellbeing centres, such as the recently opened facility in Nowra, and the Wagga Wagga Centre aims to deliver a range of support services, including physical and mental health, advocacy, education, employment, housing and financial assistance. And I commend Charlotte Webb for her work in ensuring the progress of that. But I do want to really promote the Patria, the Wellbeing Wellness Centre that is endeavoured. The Carmelite nuns have offered up their site in North Ashmont to further that particular facility, and there are many good community board members on that. David Bardos, Anne Delaney, Paul Fernan, Alan Lane, Brad Maynard, Helen Wheeler, Jason Frost, making sure that they can make a difference for veterans, for first responders as well. Colonel James Hammett, the former Commandant of ARTC Kapooka, was an honorary committee member. He was pushing it as well during his time there. He's since moved on, and we thank him for his service to Kapooka. But as I say, there are many other community members as well. Lyle Salmon as the chair, Jane Barnes, Lachlan Feeney, Dr Jim Reid, Angelo Strano, Colin Taggart and Jackie Van der Velde, all of whom are making a difference, trying to progress that, hoping to get funding. And I appreciate I've had a good long chat or chats with the not just the Veterans Affairs Minister, but indeed the Deputy Prime Minister, who was also the Minister for Defence. In relation to that, the former coalition government promised $5 million for a wellbeing centre in Wagga Wagga. It just makes good sense. I mean, we've got so many veterans in Wagga Wagga, home of the soldier. Spend any given time in the Air Force, you end up at Wagga Wagga, and indeed an important Navy strategic base as well, even though we don't have a lot of water generally around the area unless it's flooding, and I'm not sure that HMAS Adelaide will be down the Murrumbidgee River anytime soon. But I commend this particular bill. I thank again the Minister for having the foresight, the dedication and the commitment to attend the chamber while people are speaking about this bill. I commend him for the work that he is doing in this space right at the present time. and wish him all the very best for the future. It's a big role. I also commend the Department of Veterans Affairs. Sometimes they get a bad rap. By and large, they do a very, very good job, and I know they'll continue to do that for and on behalf of our veterans.
I thank the honourable member for Riverina.